All right. Thank you very much, TJ. And congratulations once again to Einar for being able to go through to the next round in the Spring Championship. Remember, that's going to be happening next month. It's not going to be happening next week. Next week is the Americas Preliminary, which is really exciting. Again, 8 players from each region across all the 4 regions that we have laid out here. I am Frodan, of course. Anybody who's tuning in, I am joined by Subtle, and Frank Laporte is just going to stay on the desk here for this next series.
Just hanging out.
It's going to be really cool. Once again, we have an opportunity to see 2 players go at it, and these ones have some interesting stories, if we have a second. Hopefully they don't go into the game too fast, but we do know and recognize the games are. We have George C., a player that Subtle's very familiar with, versus Casey, a player that I'm pretty familiar with. But let's start off with George. What do you know about him that the stream should know about?
I believe it's George C. versus Devou, right? It's the game that we have.
Right,
yeah.
Casey's coming up next. It's George C. versus Devou. Apologize. I'm really excited to talk about Casey.
Yeah, I can tell. It's just coming out prematurely. George C. is a player from the UK. I haven't personally had a huge amount of interaction with him, but I've kind of known and heard stories about him. He's a player that a lot of people in the UK kind of equate to our version of Amnesiac. He's a very young player, but very prodigal, very, very quick learner, has picked up the game extremely fast. Still has an element of the teenager about him. He likes to spectate people's games and sort of bombard them with what play they should be making, as I understand it. But the important thing is that everyone who does that, everyone he's done that to, has said, it's kind of annoying, but the really annoying thing is that he's right every single time. So, if you're going to get good advice, there's at least that. So I've heard a lot of good things about him. Ball Control, for example, who's a strong contender for one of the best players in the UK himself, says that actually George C. is quite possibly the best player in the UK. So.
I'm going to follow up this story with another one. George C. tried to play in the winter preliminaries. He drove all the way from the north of England to the south of England trying to compete. His father drove him, of course, because he's a minor. And unfortunately, he was disqualified on the day of competition because he arrived a little bit past the check-in time. Even though he got an email, there's a little bit of complications of it. Unable to compete and a little bit heartbroken for it. Of course, some of the people try to reach out to him and really support him, but now he's back, and you can see that a lot of people really want to see him be able to have his first real try. Last time he qualified for the preliminaries, didn't get a chance to compete, and this time he's one step away yet again.
The prodigal son returns, as it were.
Prodigal son returns, I guess. Meanwhile, speaking of another second chance here, Devou is the player that coming in from the winner bracket earlier today. We watched him drop after losing his match. What do you get a sense of his lineup? He is bringing a Druid, which is very unusual, and he's got that token beast type of synergies going on in his deck.
Well, you got to discriminate against druids.
just because they're so different, man. They're you just kind of make fun of them. They're antlers and stuff. They're weird.
Centaurs. It's a centaur thing,
Frank
isn't it?
repping that Cthulhu Druid life. He's all about it.
Hey, listen, I've been on it since yesterday, so I'm going to stick to it.
The interesting thing though is that this is a beast druid, right? That we're seeing from Devou. So we've seen a little bit of ramp druid and Cthulhu Druid, which can function pretty well in the meta that people were expecting to just be kind of a control buster, just too many big threats that they can't deal with. You play a big dude every single turn. Eventually, they run out of ways to deal with it. This Beast Druid is much more zooey and tries to get onto the board early, spiral it with buffs and Violet Teacher and stuff. So it worked very well for Orange, I believe, in DreamHack in the Swiss portion, but I think he's lost faith in the deck a little bit since. Devou obviously hasn't, considers it strong enough to bring here.
I mean, it won him the game that he wanted to the previous series, too, when he was playing against Tice. I mean, it reminds us why he's strong. Savage Roar is still a very good card if you have minions on board.
Very true.
Turns out it scales great, just the same as it did before.
You got 2 guys, you got 6 guys, it's going to be good.
Yeah, it's great. So, even though Druid comes in as one of the classes people underestimate it, it's going to be available this time around. Taking a look at the bans as well, George has banned Devou's Warrior, one of the best choices, I think, available. And Devou's chosen to take away the Shaman from George. What's your take on this, Subtle?
It's interesting stuff. It's a control warrior that's been banned out from Devou, which suggests that he's really trying to push through some of these more aggressive decks that he has. And then the Shaman has been taken out from Devou because, I mean, I guess he gets to carry his Rogue and doesn't want to run into the Face Shaman, thinks his Rogue can do a lot of work here. So that makes a lot of sense. But I just want to talk a little bit more about George C's decks because he has what seems like a fairly standard lineup. He has Freeze Mage, Zoo, Face Shaman and the Tempo Warrior, but they've all got little interesting twists in them. We saw Leroy Jenkins in the Tempo Warrior, for example, in a previous series that we saw, but there's also things like Tournament Medic in his Freeze Mage.
Yeah, we brought it up earlier on stream. It's a very interesting replacement.
Right.
Yeah, people used to put the Antique Heal Bot in the deck, and then now Tournament Medic. Yeah, it's a card that you don't really see very often at all. It came from the Grand Tournament.
I like it. I'm a fan of obscure cards.
Yeah. Do you like that call? I mean, he's got that weird tech all over his decks. What's your take on the more Tournament Medic?
I mean, I think what it shows more than anything is that he's a player who does want to think for himself, and generally there's stages of Hearthstone. Generally you start off and you're playing complete weird nonsense because you don't know what a good deck is. Then you start to realize what a good deck is, and you start playing established stuff and climbing a little bit higher. Then when you get to the real upper echelons, you understand how to tweak your deck for the meta and make those little 1% adjustments to improve your win rate. So it shows the kind of level that he's at, that he's willing to make those little tweaks in his deck.
All right, well, who is going to join us for the Spring Championship? Will it be Devou or will it be Georgec? Take it away, boys.
Thank you very much, Frodan. So it looks like game 1 here. We are going to see the Mage of Georgec going up against the Rogue of Devou. And Georgec has come out in a pretty good spot here because the Rogue is kind of one of those finely tuned combo decks that is just aiming to kill you once over the course of the game.
Right.
When you have 2 copies of Ice Block in your deck and you're asking your opponent to kill you 3 times, that suddenly becomes a little bit difficult. Yeah, exactly.
You're definitely challenging them at that point.
Right, so opening mulligans here. Not overly exciting from either player. Both of them have some kind of late-game combo tools that they need, the Thaurissan and the Auctioneer, but nothing to really progress themselves through in the early game.
Yeah, like this Acolyte is it's a great card, but it doesn't really have any synergies with anything in his hand right now, or with Devou's hand, really.
Yeah, so probably looking to throw it away, pick up some of his earlier cycle, the Novice Engineers and the Loot Hoarder. Doomsayer, not a great card early for tempo, so probably not too interested in picking up that. Devou, on the other hand, may just decide to keep the Gadgetzan Auctioneer just because of how important it is to cycle, but this is a much more tempo-focused matchup. He'll be looking to get things like Tomb Pillager, as you see there, down onto the board and start beating to face nice and early. The draw comes out here. Nothing to do on turn 1, so just passes over. Turn 2 for the Mage. Equally, the fireworks are going to take a little while to go off here, Frank.
Shoot you in the face and then pass, looks like.
Yep, Georgec is just going to sit back, though, and take some time to consider his options. And he's going to mouse over a few cards. I think this is something we saw him do in previous series as well, just kind of not giving away information to his opponent. He's going to try and even give some misinformation to his opponent about what he's doing with the cards in his hands.
Right. He's taking his time, even though his only we both know his only play is to, hero power and pass.
Yeah.
But, if he makes it seem like he's got 2 or 3 other options, then, it makes Devou question maybe what's going on in this hand.
Yeah, I like as well that he's kind of bluffing the action in real life. He's actually doing the eyes going up to the corner of his head thing as if he's considering things very, very carefully, and then just goes ahead and pings the face. So very, very heavy commitment to the bluff there from Georgec.
That was a very heavy commitment. Yep. I was like, we're waiting here for quite a while for this turn.
So again, nothing too exciting on the other side. Just the hero power pass is probably going to be seen here, but just going to consider about whether he wants to pump in that 1 damage to face while he can.
Or if he wants to also run the bluffs here.
Yeah. This could be a very slow paced game if everyone just decides to bluff 3 cards in their hand every turn. So he's going to dig in for 1 damage. The dagger not overly important to use for minion removal in this matchup anyway, so it makes sense to just get the value out of it and get those attacks in for that 1 extra damage to face.
Well, we're probably just drawing 2 cards here, I'd imagine. Or we could also drop Acolyte, but I don't know if what do you think of dropping Acolyte here?
I mean, dropping Acolyte plays perfectly into something like Dagger Up Deadly Poison, which would be a perfect 3-mana play for his opponent here. It could also choose to use that on turn 5 and use the Arcane Intellect here, find a turn 4 off the Arcane Intellect, and just go Acolyte Ping on turn 5.
Right, I like that too.
But he's just going to go ahead and play it out here, which I guess is fine. He's just considering his options, wants some board presence.
I always want to try to maximize the number of cards I could draw off an Acolyte. It's more like, it's kind of like a small engine rather than just a 1/3 creature that maybe draws you cards.
Right. The only thing I can consider here in terms of playing the Acolyte is, as I mentioned at the start, the thing you're kind of scared of as the Freeze Mage in this matchup, in a matchup that you are pretty favored in overall, is if your opponent kind of goes like coin Tomb Pillager into Tomb Pillager and just goes out from there and like pressures you. Yeah. So at least this way he's kind of discouraging the coin Tomb Pillager play, because then he can start to ping his Acolyte and pick up some value.
Yeah, it definitely gives him some time after that.
So Devou is going to have to figure out whether he wants to react to this. He can still coin the Tomb Pillager if he wants to. He's not really forced to overreact to this Acolyte. Doesn't have a clean way of dealing with it anyway. So he's going to go ahead and do it, and he's just going to give the 2 cards straight over to his opponent using the backstab.
5, 4, 4. Yeah, that's so many cards.
All right, I mean, the theory being that his opponent is going to draw these cards if he wants them anyway. He can just happily ping his own Acolyte and pick up the cards anyway, so he might as well just take the pressure off the board, plays around things like Forgotten Torch to be able to remove the Tomb Pillager, but Georgec just has the clean fireball.
The difference is just that, like, when you're pinging it yourself, you are having to expend your own resources,
right?
Whereas, like, now, Devou is actually spending his resources instead, both mana and cards.
Yeah, absolutely. Would have been forced to slow down a lot more if he had to ping his own Acolyte to pick up extra cards.
Yeah.
But the play would have ended up the same. Like, there just would be an Acolyte on the board. If he just clean Fireballed it, he'd just still have an Acolyte hitting face for 1 every turn. So
it doesn't actually look like... Yeah, I think it's just... What is it? Fireball 1/1 here, right? It doesn't even look like he has that many lines here until turn 6.
Yeah, not really. The Drake is going to get coined out here by Devou, and you can see what he picks up. Does have that Gadgetzan Auctioneer in hand, so he'll be looking for ways to cycle that very, very soon and pick up some options. And there is the much-discussed Tournament Medic coming into hand.
That's what we were just talking about, this guy earlier.
Yep.
Is this guy a 1-of, do we know?
It's a 1-of in the deck, yeah. So 4 mana, 1/8, restores 2 health to your hero when you use your hero power. So it's something that you need to kind of get to stick on the board for a little while to actually get any kind of consistent value out of it. Just healing for 2 as a 1-off isn't going to be too impactful on the game, but as Frodan mentioned, we've lost Antique Healbot from the format, which was the go-to healing for the mage if they did want to run some. So
it's definitely interesting against the Zoo decks, though, because there's so many X1s in the Zoo deck, and being able to like just gain 2 life every turn, or kill an X1 and gain 2 life is just seems good. 8 health is a lot.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Things like Forbidden Ritual, flooding the board with 1/1s, Tournament Medic is pretty nice to be able to work against that. Right, and if they have to commit 8 damage into tanking into it to get rid of it, then that's kind of a win for you overall.
It's an interesting choice.
It really is. I like this play a lot from Devou, though. He recognizes that he's kind of behind in this matchup just by nature and just by not being able to get too much pressure going early. So he's going to take the big risk here, and he's made a massive Azure Drake.
This is the old all my eggs in this one basket here.
Mm. I mean, but I don't mind it, honestly. He does have to take risks to win this matchup because he doesn't have the kind of tempo hand that could have just kept up consistent pressure on the mage. So he needs to get the damage through as quick as possible. Something you mentioned in the previous series is you just can't give Freeze Mage all the time in the world to set up. You have to pressure them.
That's what they want. They want to win in the late game when they're able to drop their bombs, like Alexstrasza or like who else is even.
I mean, Emperor Thaurissan on a big hand of burn and just burn you out. Like,
yeah, Emperor Thaurissan with this hand is just great.
Yeah. So he does have to find a way to react to this Drake. Does have several ways to do it. Can just clean Fireball it off the board. Can choose to stall with Blizzard here if he really wants to and deal with it the next turn. But that is Fireball number 2 being used right now. So the massive burn in his hand is slowly dissipating right now. But still, both Cold Bloods now invested from Devou, so his damage output is greatly limited as well.
Yeah, which is nice, because like when you're George C here, you actually have less to worry about in terms of like Leroy Jenkins. Like just a burst combo that's coming at your face.
Yeah, he's picked up both Auctioneers now, so his hand is looking a little bit slow. He has both of those Auctioneers in his hand, but nothing like no coins, no backstabs, no preps to go with them, so the explosive power of his Miracle turns are not really that high right now. And the Freeze Mage is getting low. There is only 1 ice block in hand right now that is going to have to be developed fairly soon.
10 cards, though.
Yeah, 10 cards is very true.
He's got the full grip.
He certainly has, but he still needs to find the time to use them.
That's the question, yeah.
Yeah, 10 cards in hand doesn't mean an awful lot if you're dead. It doesn't really matter how many cards are in your hand.
You can't take them with you, as they say.
Yeah, exactly. You have to get them out into play somehow, and he is forced to develop the ice block sooner rather than later because of that damage that that Devou jammed in with the Azure Drake, 12 damage with the Cold Bloods. Tournament Medic not quite going to cut it here. He can heal for 2, but I'm going to have to say that Ice Block comes down pretty soon. He may choose to rely on the barrier and go that way, but if he's developing a secret here, I feel like it may as well be the block. He's going to use both and an Ice Lance, so a very defensive play. Devou just, again, staring at this hand of 2 Auctioneers. Just another Drake, so still no chance to go off with this Gadgetzan Auctioneer.
Right, yes. No real cards that can actually chain into the Auctioneers, unfortunately.
Okay.
Well, that's a start.
Yeah, now this is getting kind of exciting, because there's no Flame Strike in George C's hand right now, so if a big board of Resilient minions was to get concealed, he could stall it out with a Blizzard, but he'd have no way of clearing it out of hand.
Oh, Torch is very good here.
Torch is not bad, but Blood Mage, yeah, I was going to say Blood Mage Blizzard is looking pretty appealing.
That's actually very good.
Does leave the Drake in play, though, which is a scary source of spell damage to leave up for a rogue deck, but he's chilling right now at 16 health with an Ice Block up, so he won't be feeling too pressured.
And ideally, it's only a 1-turn window before we can hero power that guy.
Right. But this is a pretty fantastic-looking Auctioneer turn, because not only do you conceal your Auctioneer, you also remove that 4/1 Drake from the easy removal of just a ping from your opponent.
And that changes our original plan there.
Yep, gonna go ahead and remove the Blood Mage. We'll cycle one more card for Georgec. But the Conceal coming down is a big deal. As we said, no Flame Strike in hand for Georgec. I believe he's not even running one in the deck, if I remember from what from looking at it. So he's going to have to find a way to deal with this. Blizzard does at least stall the Auctioneer and get rid of the Drake problem, but the Auctioneer still lives on board. So Devou is going to draw pretty much his entire deck this time.
Well, George is interested in letting the pain speak to him, it seems.
So Devou needs to start this turn very quickly no matter what he does, because he's going to need to react to the cards that he draws to find the right play here. He may just try and go for lethal if that's at all possible. Fires the Shiv at face, already has one Eviscerate in his hand, so if he can pick up some more sources of damage, then we may be in business. But the big problem is that double Cold Blood already being used, which limits the damage output a lot.
It's so funny seeing Gadget and Auctioneer, because like remember, the cost went up on this guy and he saw no play whatsoever after that, but now he's back. Now he's good enough still.
Right, I always feel kind of sad for Bomb Lobber in situations like this, because Bomb Lobber was introduced in the game, a lot of people theorized, as a counter to stealth Gadgetzan Auctioneers, but it came out at the same time as Auctioneer was nerfed, so it wasn't seeing play. And now Auctioneer is back, but Bomb Lobber has rotated out of the set with GVG.
So he never had his time to shine.
He just never had its time. I'm telling you, Bomb Lobber could have been the MVP of Hearthstone for a while.
He could have been a contender, as they say.
Yep. So barrier number 2 does come in, which gives him a little bit of protection for his Ice Block here, but the immediate Gadgetzan Auctioneer problem does have to be dealt with. If the Ice Barrier were to come down, there isn't enough damage in hand from Devou to just pop without activating any physical damage to proc it.
And like we both know that there's another Auctioneer right in his hand, so yep. I mean, the card drawing does not seem to have an end anytime soon.
It doesn't, but again, we keep coming back to it. The 2 Cold Bloods have already been used, so the amount of possible damage output in Devou's deck is quickly evaporating.
Yeah, it's basically just whatever's on the card at this point.
Right. We may even see a situation here where the Rogue just runs out of damage, and then a defensive Alexstrasza just creates too much health on the Freeze Mage at the end of the game for the Rogue to ever hope to deal. That's a way that we've seen Miracle Rogue games end in the past against Freeze Mage, but there's still a number of different routes this could take. Georgec heavily considering all of his options here.
I keep looking at the Georgec profile image, and it kind of gives you an idea of how young he is.
Right, yeah. The camera positioning is very fitting, for selling the idea that he is a young child.
And then I'm like, maybe he heard us because he sat up a little bit.
It's like, whoa, exposed. It's all right. I'm a big boy, honestly.
This 1-8's actually very well positioned right here. It seems like, you know, I would think so if I was Georgec. You know, you can start hero power and gaining a life. You're at 8 right now, but you also have 2 secrets, which are very defensive, so...
Yeah, so technically as long as physical damage comes in, he's actually at 16 right now, and this is a situation where the Tournament Medic can shine, honestly, because, as I said, the Rogue's deck is running low on damage at this point, so that's either 8 damage that needs to be sunk into this Tournament Medic, or it's just a persistent threat on the board.
Oof, deals 6 with the Shadow Strike.
SI7 Agent can finish it off if he would like to, but that is 2 damage essentially from the SI, again, out of the deck. The damage from the Battlecry that has not gone face to be able to take out the Tournament Medic. There is the barrier being procced. That's even more health from Georgec. And Georgec has a little bit of a reaction to that, like a knowing smile. Almost shook his head a little bit as if he thinks attacking the Ice Barrier there was a mistake from Devou.
There's a larger torch.
There it is. 1 Roaring Torch in hand, 1 Forgotten Torch that still needs to be cast. The Torches is just such a nice card, because we saw him have to use both Fireballs for board control in the early game, but Forgotten Torch is just a card that can just put those Fireballs back in your deck afterwards and just make sure you can build up a bunch of...
No
3 mana. Does still have a board to deal with here. He is just down to his Ice Block here. Still yet to draw the second Ice Block as well, so he doesn't have a great deal of security right now, so he does need to keep controlling the board. And honestly, I feel like the option of just running the Rogue out of damage over the course of the game might be his best option now. Just exhaust the Rogue's options.
What to do?
What do you feel about dropping Alexstrasza and maybe trying to burn him out with torches? Is that an option?
I mean, if you were to Alexstrasza your opponent's face here, you're almost guaranteed to lose your Ice Block on the next turn. And you don't have the damage set up immediately to deal with it. You have 3 from the Torch, you have the 6 from the Roaring Torch. So without the second Ice Block in hand, what would happen is that you'd lose your first block, you don't have the win in hand, so unless you top decked exactly your second block, you'd be in a really big trouble.
Be a little more conservative.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes sense.
So yeah, Backstab and Van Cleef is picked up. This Van Cleef may be one of his last hopes here, honestly, is something that can really stick to the board and be persistent damage. He may just have to go all in at some point on a huge Van Cleef, which has a pretty decent hand to be able to do that as well. He is running low on cards, though, so we may just be in the situation where that second Auctioneer never gets played because it's just going to indicate fatigue for the rogue player. Well, apparently I'm wrong. He's going to try and dig through his deck as quickly as possible. I'm not sure exactly how many cards he has left, but it does not look like many. Picks up the prep, draws even more cards.
Yeah, this could be a very big Van Cleef if he wants to play some free cards and then play a Van Cleef afterward.
Right.
Like, this could be a 10-10 or a 12-12.
So we go ahead and eviscerate the Acolyte, which again is a lot of damage invested.
Draws a card. Still possible.
Yeah, the Van Cleef does come down here as a 10-10.
Very sizable. But we know, like, the 10 damage is going to be prevented.
It is. He does have the Ice Lance to be able to prevent that, but again, that's another resource that he can then not use to burn his opponent back after the Alexstrasza if the game tends to go that way. But Roaring Torch on the Gadgetzan, Ice Lance on the Edwin Van Cleef, and Doomsayer is a play that looks appealing. It looks like it'll have a chance of going off, but I think he's drawn nearly his entire deck here, and I think you've only seen one sap used, which would immediately deal with that Doomsayer.
Well, is the secret an Ice Block? Do we know?
It is Ice Block, yeah.
Okay.
So he does have that guaranteed protection, and the Doomsayer play is the play he's going to go for. He's going to go for double Doomsayer, in fact, trying to get them both to stick. And this makes a lot of sense. He just knows he needs to deal with that 10-10.
I'm almost out of cards.
Oh, okay, there is literally only 2 cards left in the deck. So yeah, this very much looks like it's gone down the line that I predicted, where he's just going to try and run him out of stuff here.
Yeah, and it looks like, I mean, we know his hand. It looks like that's very possible. Like, he basically has a Leroy. And maybe?
Zarl, he's going to try and pick up an option that helps him clear out these Doomsayers. King's Blood is the worst possible one he could have got. That is just draw a card. That is the last thing he wants to do right now. He's going to backstab his own Zarl, still looking for answers. Picks up Briarthorn, and now he's just going to be forced to Leroy. Leroy Briarthorn does help him to pop the Ice Block this turn, which does create a scenario, but now he is going to lose his whole board. And I think defensive Alexstrasza now will lock up game 1 here for George C.
Yeah, it just puts George C back up to 15.
Sure does. Both Doomsayers go off, just for good measure, just in case one wasn't enough.
There's an Archmage Antonidas, just in case.
Yeah, there is the defensive Alexstrasza. Out of cards, all of his damage used. The remaining Toxin is just the King's Blood Toxin. And that is game 1 to George C. So huge victory from George C. As we mentioned, the stakes could not be higher. It's worth mentioning this is George C's first stab at actual qualification here. We saw him on stream yesterday, but it wasn't in a qualification match.
It looks like he's doing quite well.
It really does, yeah. Whereas Devou comes the other way. He's already had 1 shot against Tice, and he fell short. So he may be now, after going 1-0 down, he might be saying, oh no, not again. Like, I've come so close twice. I'm falling apart again. But, you know, it's only the first game. He still has plenty of time to come back. But the Freeze Mage of George C has now picked up the victory with that interesting tech of the tournament.
And you can see from that match like how familiar with the deck George C is. Like, he was making some very, very good plays. He was just stalling his opponent out. He's like, I'm just going to fatigue you now. You know, like, you definitely know when to stop actually trying to win the game through like damage or burn, and to just, you know, drain them out, you know, like to just run you out of cards.
Right. It's one of the things that I really do love about Freeze Mage is that every game plays out dramatically differently.
Yes,
your win condition isn't always the same. A lot of people think, oh, you know, Freeze Mage is just Alex them on 9, kill them on 10.
It's definitely not, though.
It's just not the way it plays out all the time. You have to react to the situation so heavily. George C definitely showed an ability to recognize that.
And there's so many decks right now that draw so many cards that you can just grind them out. You have to commit more guys to the board, or else, you know, you're not going to get ahead. And then when you do that, well, like, I'm kind of going to kill them all.
Right, it's the ultimate catch-22. A few decks have it in Hearthstone. Like, Warrior has it with Brawl. They play Justicar, and then suddenly you have to put enough pressure on to race the hero power, and you get caught in a Brawl. Freeze Mage is the same. You have to put enough pressure on in order to rush them down. But then you just open yourselves up to things like Frost Nova, Doomsayer, Blizzard, Flame Strike, etc.
Their whole army of board wipes, you know?
Yes, indeed. So the Torch Freeze has been checked off for George C. He now has his Leroy-based Zoo and his Tempo Warrior with the interesting inclusion of Leroy Jenkins that we saw on stream earlier.
Interesting.
Yeah, he has cut the super late game option where some people play Refarm, some people play Varian, and instead he's added in a Leroy, which makes his deck a little bit faster. It really is, right? The deck does operate a little bit quicker than the ones that we've seen so far. He's really looking to rush people down with all the weapons, Corcrons, efficient minions, etc.
Nice, yes,
so,
that seems good.
Yep. Devou's perspective, he's going to be looking at what he wants to pick in here.
I'm interested to see this Druid deck, to be honest with you.
Right. Yeah, Beast Druid, I think he's the only player we've seen playing with Beast Druid.
Yeah,
on stream.
I don't think we've seen it this weekend yet.
And Mark of Yasharaj is an incredibly powerful card in a vacuum. It's just the ability to consistently get beasts to stick to the board in order to activate it.
Right. There's actually, when I first started playing Hearthstone, I would have to keep checking on cards and being like, "Is this a beast?
Right.
Is it? It's not. Darn it! It looks like a beast." And then there's like, so you really want to make sure you have enough beasts in your deck to actually, be relevant for the cards that need them.
Mark of Yasharaj is a card that would benefit enormously from Haunted Creeper still being in the format. That's like a sticky beast that people don't want to deal with. Right now, you're just kind of operating with like 3/2 Panthers and the Druid of the Saber.
Just your generic beasts.
Just not the greatest things to stick to the board all the time. But Beast Druid is one of the weak decks he is going to have to win with. Also has his mid-range Shaman and his own Miracle Rogue, I believe, are the remaining decks. His Control Warrior was banned. So his mid-range Shaman is an interesting list as well. Something that's a little bit different from what we've seen. Everyone has been going with the Totem Flood, Thunderbluff Valiant Bloodlust version.
That's what it seems like, yeah.
He's actually running Alakir instead and doesn't have those board flooding. He doesn't have the Bloodlust, he doesn't have the Thunderbluff.
Interesting.
He's just using Alakir.
He's choosing a bunch of different lists.
Then. Right. Both of these players just kind of have interesting small twists on existing archetypes.
Which is nice. I'm glad we're getting to see these matchups play out because these are unique decks that we haven't really seen much of this past weekend.
And just to make the point, this is a game for qualification right here. George C is in the driver's seat right now, but the winner of this will book their seat at the Europe Spring Championship. The loser in this case goes home, which hasn't been the case in the games that we've been watching up until this point. Most of them, the loser still gets a second chance in the lower bracket, but this is go big or go home time. Everything is on the line that you've worked for over the past few months here. So it's going to be that Tempo Warrior with the Leroy Jackson up against the Beast Druid here from Devou. We see Mounted Raptor in the hand, which is a beast that is sticky in the sense of having a death rattle, but still, the initial body is quite easy to deal with, only being a 3/2.
I also like this Violet Teacher here, and that's a nice addition.
Right. Violet Teacher is generally included in the deck because you're running Power of the Wild, because the Panther is a beast that you can summon out of it as a 3/2, but the Violet Teacher Power of the Wild interaction itself is pretty crazy. Because you spawn 1/1s and then immediately buff them with the effect of the card as well. Fiery War Axe looks like it can be equipped here. That will allow him to, on the following turn, deal with the Violet Teacher using Slam and the Fiery War Axe attack. So may just see that. He may just even choose to just attack this over 2 turns with the Fiery War Axe, which is a possibility as well.
Yep, that looks like what we're doing. At the cost of 6, but you do want to get the Violet Teacher off the board. It does threaten to get out of control at some point.
Right.
Is that Mountain Raptor?
There's the Mounted Raptor. He could have, done it the same way with the Slam this turn, but by attacking on the previous turn, he now gives himself the option to throw a removal spell at the other minion that your opponent is going to play this turn, in which case, in this case being the Mounted Raptor, but he's instead just going to go ahead and coin out the incredibly competitive Bloodhoof Brave. 2/6 against 3/2. Seems like a good deal.
And then, 5x against, whatever Devou might play.
Right.
Seems just fine.
Yeah, so from Devou's side here, Savage Combatant is picked up, which, again, is a pretty competitive minion against the 2/6 that comes down, but that is going to allow the 2/6 to get value first into the 3/2 Raptor, and as you said, buff it up to 5 attack, which then makes it competitive against the Savage Combatant itself.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that whole series of events goes well for George C, it seems like.
So how about the alternative play? What does Swipe do for him in this position?
Not much. It's still a 2-for-1.
Right. I mean, he would swipe, he would retain just a 1-drop out of his Mounted Raptor to contest the board, which isn't a great deal, but that second War Axe pickup is huge here. Slam Fiery War Axe allows him to tidy up this board so effectively. Just goes ahead and chops down the Savage Combatant. He has taken a bunch of damage here.
16, yeah.
Right.
I mean, he's not super healthy right now, but, I mean, then again, you are playing against... You're playing against Druid here, so it's possible that you don't have to worry too much, but
and this is a fairly aggressive deck. It has a lot of token summoning in it, plus Savage Roar, so
charge creatures.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
you're not out of the woods, so so to speak.
But the ability for this deck to bounce back just through the hero power, through Armor Smiths for life gain. You play a lot of taunts in the deck, Bloodhoof Braves, Fierce Monkeys, etc. So your ability to bounce back is pretty high as long as you can gain control of the board at some point. So it's not looking too terrible here.
Yeah, also George C has a pretty full grip. I mean, he's got 6 cards here.
Yeah, 6 cards and plenty of options to cycle even. He has Slam, which draws a card, Battle Rage, which can give him even more options here, but he is really just going to be looking to just gain a grip on this board as quickly as he can, because this board starts to be compounded by things like Mark of Yasharaj, moving forward to not only increase the pressure on the board, but make sure that the Druid keeps plenty of cards in hand. Then he's going to quickly find himself in trouble.
George C at 12. I don't know why. This is a scary little life total there.
It really is, yeah. I mean,
this is very low, very quick.
He's kind of felt like in control of this matchup for most of it. He's just been dealing with the threats that were in front of him.
It feels like he's in control, but he's disregarding his life total to be in control, which kind of concerns me a little bit.
Right, I think it's something that you kind of have to do when you draw double weapons so early in the game.
True,
like you have to use those weapons to commit and kill your opponent's minions, but it's just a happy byproduct really for the aggressive deck that's meant that he's in a pretty nice position here in terms of being able to push through damage.
And we're going to start amassing some armor here, ideally, so that seems okay.
Hey! Shifter Xerus pops out. Unfortunately, doesn't transform into a new minion every turn when he's on the board, so he's just going to be a lowly 1-1 here for Devou. Still allows him to push 1 more damage right now and picks up the Druid of the Saber plus Mark combo, which can push a lot of damage in charge form, or he can play it right now in stealth if he would like to. He might even just be considering the potential Fandral synergies, but Druid of the Saber is not really one of the cards that benefits too greatly from Fandral Stack Helm. Stealth and charge, not the greatest combination of effects in the game.
As you can imagine.
Yeah. So it looks like he's just going to use Mark of Yasharaj to push extra damage here on his 1-1 Xerus and sacrifice the card draw. Just say that he can push through enough damage with the minions he has.
Deal damage, make it 2-2, get an armor maybe?
I mean, yeah, the Blood to Ichor can get him somewhere on the board, but I think he's going to have to look for a Battle Rage here to try and pick up some taunts, pick up some Whirlwind effects to try and gain armor. It's all looking pretty messy, but there's some cards in his deck that can start to dig him out of trouble. Executes, taunt minions, etc. Does pick up a Fierce Monkey. So Fierce Monkey's played to the board. That's still the best he can do, really, is armor up. And that's not still looking too promising since the Fierce Monkey's immediately challenged by that Azure Drake.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of this match. It seems extremely interesting.
I mean, honestly, the Beast Druid just looks pretty impressive, right? Like, it's run into what seems to be a pretty strong start from the Warrior deck, where he drew the War Axe and was able to control the board early, but...
It's like he just didn't even care.
Yeah.
He just kept going.
Yeah, but just through the use of that Innovate Violet Teacher early, dealing so much damage, essentially that Violet Teacher dealt 9 because it was attacked twice.
3-5 is just huge on turn 3.
Right, exactly. It just came down much too early, dealt a bunch of damage because he chose to attack it twice, and that's just been the platform for him to push all this extra damage through so far. Now he's kind of getting to the point where he is able to stabilize this board a little bit. He has a Blood to Ichor and Execute that can allow him to take control of this board just a little bit. As you take a look at some of the big names that George C's left in the graveyard on his way out here. Sho, Gara, and Powder on his way. That's a pretty impressive list of bodies that he's left in his wake.
And Loyan, we saw a matchup with Loyan earlier today.
Right. Looks like George C is now considering a Battle Rage option as to whether he can pick up something to get him out of this. But as I was going to say, he has Blood to Ichor and Execute to take out the Drake and the Xerus if he would like to. He is going to start with the Battle Rage. Still has the mana available to make that play if he wants to, alongside the Frothing Berserker for board presence. But this is getting really scary, Frank. He's getting low.
Yeah, this is our only option. Then you just get rid of the 3-2. Still 4-4 puts him to 4, though.
And still, like, he's just having to make these miserable plays, and I believe this is just lethal now.
I think this is lethal, yeah.
Power of the Wild. I made fun of the charge plus stealth combination, but you do get a nice 3-attack charge out of the Fandral effect. So.
Yeah, and this is exactly what we were afraid of. Like, you took too much damage early from your Fiery War Axes, and the just having to attack, and it just you just can't keep that up. Like, it's not sustainable. So eventually, you're just gonna lose.
Yeah, it all came down to that Violet Teacher dealing 9, honestly.
I agree, yeah.
Violet Teacher was innovated out, Fiery War Axe hit it, took 3, the Violet Teacher attacked 3 more, and then 3 more to attack it again.
Yeah, it was as if George C started at 24 health instead of 30,
Exactly, and yeah, I appreciate the plan that he made, attacking it twice, because it allowed him to use Slam to address a different minion on the next turn. It was just unfortunate that the minion that came down was Mounted Raptor, which was kind of difficult to deal with using that plan that he'd gone with. Did get the Taunt minion in the way, but that Mounted Raptor stuck around for a long long time and got some work done.
Yeah, it was definitely not an ideal situation, but it also seems like, if he had other cards than 2 Fiery War Axes, it might have played out a little bit different. But the fact that he had to take 9 damage from those, it's a little rough.
I mean, it's also very possible if he hadn't have got the War Axes that those minions would have just stuck around on the board even longer and just been beating through, and he just would have died even quicker.
It might just not be the great matchup for George.
Yeah, I mean, aggressive druids against slower warriors has generally been a matchup in the druids' favor as long as Hearthstone has existed. They can just put out too many threats, but that was very reliant on the Force of Nature Savage Roar coming out at the end of the game.
So right. Now that's no longer an option, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, depending on your perspective on mid-range combo druid. But we're getting very quickly into another game here, and it is going to be the Tempo Warrior yet again up against this mid-range Shaman of Devou, and as you can see, there's the card I spoke about. He doesn't have the Bloodlust, he doesn't have the Thunderbluff Valiant to flood the board and then push through a bunch of bursts that way. He's relying on Alec here, Flame Tongues, Rockbiter weapons, etc. to push through large amounts of damage in that fashion. Still, decent opening hand. Rockbiter, Totem Golem, Feral Spirits, all considerations to have here. Rockbiter doesn't really interact with anything too important, bar an Acolyte of Pain, but I would expect to see the Totem Golem and the Feral Spirits hung on to.
George C's hands also seems pretty fine here. I would keep this hand.
Yeah, the Armor Smith, again, it's a nice minion to have. It costs 2, you can play it early, but does it really interact with that well in terms of your opponent's minions? Because Shaman has the ability to play these big chunky minions
3, 4,
early.
Double 2, 3s. Yeah, I can see that. That's a good point.
Armor Smith is at its best when your opponent is playing very aggressive early minions, the small, floody, what Leponome used to be in the game. Right, it trades into those pretty well. But Devou's picked up a glorious-looking opening hand here for the mid-range deck. So many options into how to play out his mana curve. Georgec does decide to keep the Armor Smith, keeps the Slam alongside it as well, which gives him the options to tempo out. He can use those 2 cards in combination to trade up into some of those bigger threats that we spoke about. So if you're Devou here, Frank, are you committing to this Totem Golem nice and early?
It seems like a real solid play. I think Georgec probably doesn't have too many ways to deal with it without expending a bunch of cards.
Right.
And a 3/4 is just very, very big on turn 2. What?
Turn 1, yeah. What it also does is it gets down before the Armor Smith, so if you were to wait and play this on turn 2, you would lose it to, for example, Armor Smith into then Fiery War Axe, because there would already be that 1 extra damage on the board facing it down. So by getting it out first, you then have the option to play out ahead and remove that removal option from your opponent. So he's just going to send the damage into the Armor Smith here, put a little nudge into it. Georgec picks up his Finley, which is another interesting addition to this deck.
That is an interesting addition. How do you feel about Finley?
Finley is a card that you more commonly saw in Patron Warrior, because not only was Life Tap very good, as Life Tap is for most classes when they play Finley, but Fire Blast was also very effective because of all the synergies it had with Grim Patrons as well as your other cards. But in this deck, it seems a little bit more niche. Doesn't seem like Fire Blast gets quite as much work done. It is still good with Bloodhoof Brave, Acolyte of Pain.
Do you think the Fire Blast is actually better than the 2 armor?
I think in a lot of situations, yes. This is a tempo deck. It's not really a deck that's trying to gain a bunch of armor. I know calling this a tempo deck does annoy Brian Kibler a little bit, but I think, Leroy has taken the 9-drop or the 10-drop out of the deck and replaced it with Leroy Jenkins, which I think plays a bit more into the name that it's been given as Tempo Warrior. And so we just see trades being made on the board here, using that Fire Blast to trade up more efficiently, and what looked like a very strong start for the mid-range Shaman is being picked apart quite effectively here by the Warrior deck.
Well, it's funny because we were talking about the Armor Smith, and this is actually his 2nd Armor Smith, so while it might not be fantastic in this matchup, he did actually draw both of them.
He did indeed, and he's able to take out one of these 2/3s quite effectively now using the Ravaging Ghoul and the Ping from the new Finley gifted hero power that he picked up. So there's just going to be a 2/2 left on the board up against a 1/1 and a 3/3. So he's managing to maintain tempo. He's staying ahead on the board. This is something that you have to do against the mid-range Shaman deck. If they start to build a platform and suddenly their cards like Flame Tongue Totem, etc. just become exponentially better because they have a bunch of small minions on the board, that's when you really get into trouble. So you need to make sure you're keeping control of this board state as early as you can.
Yeah, and he's working on it.
Yep, he uses the Rockbiter here to take out the 3/3. Healing Totem is summoned, which will start to repair some of the damage done by that Ravaging Ghoul. Battle Rage picked up, draws exactly 0 cards right now, so that's not going to be too useful.
Not only are you undamaged, you have 7 armor to boot, so you are the opposite of damaged.
Right, which is yet another reason why armor is kind of superfluous to this deck. You don't want to build up a bunch of armor. You can start to do it after you've already been damaged.
Hit, yeah. At least if you've taken 1 point, you're good. Then your battle rate just turned on, things like that.
Which is why we've seen so many players in this tournament just heavily debate the option to actually attack a warrior at all early in the game. They kind of want to wait for the armor to be built up first before they start attacking, because they don't want to just leave them at 29 and then watch them build up a bunch of armor on top of that freely.
And then just turns on every future battle rage.
So Frothing Berserker does come down, which is an enormous threat on the board. He does have options to deal with it. Hex is the most premium option in his hand. He does have the ability to take this out with just Flametongue Totem if he would like to, and that looks more appealing. Fire Elemental is the nice curve play here. He'd love to just jam a big Fire Ele here on turn 6, but unfortunately doesn't get the job done. So I'm expecting to see the Flametongue Totem come out here.
Yeah, unfortunately the Fire Elemental is just shy of being good enough.
Yeah, but Flametongue Totem still looks like an attractive option. He can Flametongue Totem, trade in both of his existing totems, and then
he's just playing Fire Elemental anyway.
Wow, interesting.
He just says 6/5 is good enough.
Just going to go ahead and Fire Elemental the face. I mean, the Flametongue Totem play looked pretty appealing to me there, honestly. Just had Flametongue Totem, summon an extra totem, play a Flame Juggler. Looked pretty reasonable. King's Defender is the pickup from Malkorok, so 3 damage does not quite allow him to take care of that Fire Elemental. Obviously, something like Gladiator's Longbow would have been the dream there, just to snipe down that Fire Elemental immediately. But the 6/5 does get to stick around on the board for now.
Also would have taken a Gore Howler, I would imagine.
Right. I think you pretty much always take a Gore Howl from Malkorok.
No, rarely are you turning that down.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's ever summoned Gore Howl from Malkorok and gone,
darn it.
Oh, Gore Howl again. I'm so unlucky. So, again, just options in hand for Devou. Has the Hex again. Malkorok is one of the bigger things in the deck, especially with the knowledge of George's deck list, knowing that he's removed the big late game threat. There's no Refarm, there's no Varian, so the deck does start to top out at things like Malkorok and Ragnaros Firelord. So Hex can be quite happily used on one of these minions if he would like to, but it's 2 minions of pretty equal threat that he needs to decide to take care of here. And
yeah, 6/5, that's going to always be a 6/5, or a 5/4 that could get bigger. So.
Right. And he may just be starting to regret his decision to not take care of this Frothing Berserker on the previous turn when he could.
Do we just run the 6/5 into the... Yeah, that's probably the right play. It feels like you just want to get rid of the Frothing Berserker, like he's just going to get larger.
He's just going to go ahead and use the Fire Elemental on the 6/5 here, which looks like a pretty solid play. Even if there is some method, for example, like Slam plus the King's Defender to take care of this Fire Elemental, the 6/2 is now at least in Lightning Storm range, which means he can be able to tidy up on a following turn. But the Ragnaros draw here from George C is pretty spectacular, but still, he's held on to that Hex to be able to answer it.
Do you think you just play Ragnaros, attack face, and then hope that the Ragnaros takes care of the Fire Elemental?
I think that's the most likely play that we're going to see here, yeah. He needs to start pushing some damage through. He's running out of cards, and his hand kind of says go face here because he has that Grom to back himself up, which he can always activate come turn 10 because of the Mage Hero power. So
yeah, that's true.
I think we may see him just believe in the Rag here, but the safe play would play around Lightning Storm because the 6/5 Fire Elemental going into the Ragnaros and then followed up by Lightning Storm would be devastating to his board if the Rag were to shoot face.
I gotta move.
He's obviously not sure himself, though. He's taking his time to consider his various options here. And he is going to believe, so he's going to trust in his Ragnaros here to get the job done. This is a huge 50-50 here for George C, and he does take care of the minion. Okay.
That's what he was hoping for. I mean, we know he still has Hex, but at least he got a free hit off of it.
Honestly, is the face the worst thing in the world right there? You put him to a pretty magical number of 10.
Yeah.
With Gromash Ping in your hand, not for the next turn, but for the turns immediately following that. So having now missed out on that little bit of damage, he's just a little bit short. He's lost board control anyway, and he's just missed out on that 8 damage that could help him push through.
Yeah, now it makes me think the 10 was or maybe it makes me think going to face was even better.
Right. Acolyte of Pain comes down, one of the better draws in his deck. He's just going to roleplay as a freeze mage very, very briefly here. Plays Acolyte of Pain on the board, pings it out. And Fiery War Axe takes care of the 1/1, picks up the Leroy here, which now could be the deal breaker.
Yeah, this is a very interesting draw here. You got both Leroy and Garrosh in hand.
And over the next couple of turns, that does represent lethal if taunts don't get in the way. Leroy will deal 6, the Fiery War Axe will deal another 3, and then he has Grom Ping to follow that up for 10 more. So he is representing lethal damage, just if he's able to play out all of his cards here. So Devu's going to have to find answers. Does have Alakir in his hand, which of course is a Divine Shielded taunt, so that can start to make a mess of this plan.
Man, that seems just fine. Just draw another card.
Hey, more charge! Just what we needed.
This is a lot of damage in Georgec's hand.
Oh, Leroy Ravaging Ghoul.
I feel like that's the play.
Yeah.
Wipe your board, give you guys... Wow, yeah, that was brutal.
Yep. I mean... And I mean, suddenly when you see a play like that, right, Leroy starts to seem a little less ridiculous in this deck. There are a lot of whirlwind options that can make those kind of plays happen.
Yeah, that was not terrible. Well,
Alakir comes down.
Probably killing both guys.
Yep, so that is the taunt minion that he needs, but it's only going to keep him around for 1 turn because Kor'kron Elite can get rid of it, and that Gromash is still around to threaten him on the following turn. Can even develop the Bloodhoof Brave just for some pressure on the board in the meantime. Gets the 1 extra damage to face with the ping as well. So this game's slipping away from Devu very, very quickly.
And shoot to the face.
I guess he's considering the merits of pinging his own guy to 5/5 instead. Yeah, because
definitely an option.
He's already achieved all the damage that he needs right now. He has 10 in hand. The merit of his opponent being at 8 instead of 9 is fairly irrelevant. So he's just going to go for the bigger guy on board right now.
It also lets him play Grommash next turn, and that's actually 9 exactly. Or he can shoot Grommash next turn and have 10 exactly. So he has 2 different routes to victory depending on whether or not the 5/5 survives.
So Taunt Totem, nope. It's up the 1/1, so there is no defensive options left in the hand for Devu.
We know that's game.
Yep. Even the emergency play that sometimes you can make where you hex one of your own minions to get a taunt would have been answered by the ping from Georgec.
He just shot himself in the face. Did you see that?
He did indeed, yeah. I think
the rubbins.
I made the mention at the start of the series that there is an element of the teenager about Georgec, and I think we're seeing that coming through. I've heard a few stories, but
Very Dennis the Menace.
Right, but you know, a little bit of shenanigans every now and again.
You rambunctious scamp, you.
A little bit of shenanigans. There's nothing wrong with it every now and again as long as you can actually back it up as a quality Hearthstone player, right?
And he did. I think he definitely did.
He's backing it up potentially all the way to Spring Championship.
We're 1 game away.
He's 1 game away. This is the biggest game of Hearthstone, possibly the biggest thing he's done in competition
so far,
in anything in his young entire life.
I feel like this is not the last we're going to see of Georgec, win or lose this this next game. So
yeah, like I said, there's a lot of rumblings around the UK. He's not a player that gets a lot of exposure. He's not a player that everyone has heard of, like the Blackouts and the Green Sheeps, for example.
And I wouldn't be surprised if that's just because he's so young, too.
Yeah, exactly. He still has time on his side to develop, but this will give him a fantastic head start. He will be the envy of many much more experienced Hearthstone players.
Wait till he's driving to his own events.
Yeah, there you go. When he actually has a car and is able to ferry himself around.
I mean, I'm sure it's just going to be much easier, you know?
Right. But
like, that's definitely a restriction.
It certainly is. But this, as we get into this and the next game, if it goes that far, are just about the most important games of Hearthstone that Georgec will have ever played.
Got the Shaman and the Warlock.
He is playing his Zoo Warlock up against the mid-range Shaman of Devu. So he will be looking to just get the fast, aggressive start. He's going to consider cards like Lightning Storm, how to play around them, whether it's correct to even play around them, or whether he should just go for all-out pressure. All of these things will be spiraling through his mind. He'll be considering everything he's ever learned about Hearthstone at this point, trying to make sure that he gets everything right for this one huge game right here.
This could be the deciding game. This hand for Devu looks very good, though.
It really does, yeah. Tunnel Trog into the
Totemic.
Right, he has the option of Tunnel Trog Coin Rockbiter on turn 1 if he wants to go that way, or he can go Tunnel Trog into Coin Tuskar Totemic on 2. Lots of ways to flexibly play this hand, and he's able to effectively fight for the board early here.
Both these hands make this matchup look very aggressive. Interesting. What do you think about the... Yeah, I guess you have to do that now. That's the correct play.
Right. I mean,
why didn't he run out Trog? Oh, because it just dies. That's right.
Yeah, your 2 options there are to make this play that he's gone with, or you could just coin the Totem Golem and then follow up with the Tunnel Trog on the following turn with your 1 remaining mana and try and do it that way. But this play just looks perfectly clean, right? You can then follow this up with the Totem Golem, buff up your Tunnel Trog on the following turn. A little bit of a sad turn here for Georgec. Doesn't have a really strong vanilla 2-drop in his hand. Only has that Direwolf that he wants to use as a buff tool, so he's forced to play a little bit off curve, just develop the Voidwalker here, and the initiative has passed very quickly over to the mid-range Shaman here, who's now also picked up a Lightning Storm, which is a huge card in this matchup.
Yeah, that's pretty good. It kills most of his things. Obviously not the Dark Shard Councilman, but, you know, many other things.
Right, especially with all the removals of Death Rattles from Zoo. There's no more Nerubian Egg, there's no more Haunted Creeper, so they're much more exposed to cards like Lightning Storm. They can get blown out a lot more easily. But this looks like a fairly straightforward Totem Golem here, and I like the preemptive attack here because he still has the potential to lose his entire Tunnel Trog to an Abusive Sergeant if he didn't make the preemptive attack.
Right. So you might as well just make it so that they trade.
Yep. The downside of this is that you can get a little bit punished by Direwolf Alpha, but if Direwolf Alpha is your opponent's play, that's probably not too worrying for you anyway. You still have a Totem Golem left to dominate it. He's going to use the Power Overwhelming and just make a competitive board here with a 2-2 against a 2-2. This makes a lot of sense as well.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it clears things up. It's nice and elegant now.
Unfortunately for Georgec, there is Rockbiter number 2, though, that comes down. And this Tunnel Trog is just going to keep pecking away. It's got him for 4 now. Darkshire Councilman is probably going to be the play here from Georgec. He's trying to decide between that and Bran. Looks like he's going to go for the Councilman.
Yeah,
any minion played next turn will allow it to take out the Tunnel Trog.
Yeah, I don't think you have any reason to play Bran here when you can just save it and to try to get value off of a Battlecry.
Right, playing Bran that turn would have meant that he does get immediate double value from, say, Defender of Argus that he just drew, but it is easily traded into if your opponent was to play a Flame Wreath Faceless that we just saw. This would mean a dead Bran, but also Feral Spirits is another option that could have done it.
7/7 is quite large.
Yeah. Even the might of Forbidden Ritual this turn would not have allowed this Councilman to trade into that 7/7. As ridiculous as that play sometimes is, it's still not going to be enough. And this is a game that is quickly spiraling out of control here for Georgec. He's just not getting a grip on this board at any point.
You just need an answer for that 7/7, and it doesn't look like he has one.
Remember, he's already used 1 Power Overwhelming as well, which is one of his best answers for huge minions. And Devou just has gas for days in his hand. Tuskar Totemic comes down. Bran gets taken care of. This board is looking pretty irreparably fantastic for Devou right now.
Irreparably fantastic is definitely a way to put it.
Yeah, Knife Juggler, Gormok, I'm pretty sure Georgec is just going through the motions at this point. I think he understands this game is lost. But
I have cards, I'll play them,
right, because
why not, but not feeling great about it. Oh, jeez. Yeah, I think this game's actually over, and this is a quick game. I mean, you know, presumably, if it's over. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but...
I mean, I'll jump to conclusions for you, Frank. This game is over.
I can see the cards in Georgec's hand, and I have a good feeling about things.
Right.
Like, these guys, the Devou's creatures are just too big. Like, they're just humongous. 6/5, 7/3, 3/2.
Yeah, and especially, like, the thing that Zoo struggles with now because of the removal of Implosion from the format is that they just can't fight from off the board anymore. They don't have that option to just destroy a minion from hand that Implosion used to give them.
You're just attacking. You're just having to...
So if you don't have the board to leverage, like, how are you supposed to fight back against these minions?
You're not. That's that's literally what it comes down to. Here's that Lightning Storm we were talking about.
Storm does come out. He chooses not to totem first because he wanted to play the thing from below, which is just another huge imposing minion coming down here. Yeah. And now it's getting to the point where it's like, well, you know, I could remove every minion here, or I could just deal 13 to face. This may look ridiculous to a lot of people. He just sent a 7/3 into a 1/1.
No, you just want to clear his board, though.
Absolutely. This goes back to exactly what we were talking about on the previous turn. If you take everything off a Zoo's board, they have no option to fight back.
So, you know, you don't have any options to give your guys +4/+4, or, you know, anything like that. You just have no guys.
Yeah, so great discipline from Devou throughout that entire series. He was able to tie this up now 2-2 very, very quickly. It really was.
Ridiculously quick match, especially because it felt like Georgec had a lot of the initiative going into that round.
Yeah,
into that game.
It's just a thing that mid-range Shaman can do. It plays all the early game cards that a more aggressive Shaman does. It has the Tunnel Trog, the Totem Golem, Feral Spirits, etc. Even has the Tuskar Totemic thrown in there, so it can curve out even more consistently sometimes. And that's exactly what we saw there. He just out early game to the Zoo. Which is very, very interesting because normally Zoo is just one of the most dominant early game decks that you can get.
Yeah, and as we saw,
So now,
as we didn't see, I guess.
As we didn't see, yeah. But now, The previous game was the most important game purely for Georgec. Now Devou is also on the hill. This is the last game for all the marbles. The winner of this is making their way to the Europe Spring Championships next month. Both of these guys, is the most important game of Hearthstone they have played in their short careers. And we are going to have to find out who's going to win this. This is Zoo against Miracle Rogue.
Georgec definitely making a comeback here from his initially missed event.
Right, yeah, exactly. Making a huge splash. And Georgec probably has the slight rough side of the matchup. Miracle Rogue is generally a very, very effective against Zoo, able to pick apart the board quite effectively. But hugely, the Zoo player has the coin here, which allows them a bit of extra tempo on a turn they choose, but more importantly, denies the coin from the Rogue player, which with the double SI7 agent right now would be a huge deal.
Yeah, the coin would be extremely relevant to double SI7 agents.
So yeah, Imgang Boss comes down. This is one of the strongest early minions you can get down against Rogue. It's very resilient to removal. Even Eviscerate and Shadow Strike still leave behind that extra token on the board.
Right, so I mean, like, you had to waste your turn Shadow Striking, and Georgec still gets a 1/1, so...
Exactly, so he still has options to play here. He'll play out the Peddler, probably looking for just a solid one-drop minion to play out alongside it here. Reliquary Seeker, Blood Imp, Shield Bearer is not it. What do you feel? What are you feeling here, Frank?
Not great, not great. Maybe the Seeker and just hold it until...
I mean, he does have a Forbidden Ritual in his hand, so if that doesn't get answered by a Fan of Knives...
Yeah, you could just get +4/+4.
Suddenly the Seeker is looking very interesting.
I think it's just better than the Shield Bearer or the Blood Imp here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Shield Bearer may be a consideration, honestly, because you do have Argus in hand, and Argus on a Shield Bearer does make a big old pile of stats, but Georgec, in fact, disagrees with both of us. He's going to go Blood Imp to try and pull up the health of some of these minions, maybe protect himself from things like Fan of Knives as this game develops.
Or SI7 agent, for that matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, +1 health every turn is not nothing.
Right, and he's just going to dig in with these minions, start to rack up the damage. The hand, for a hand containing double SI7 agent, this is actually looking a little bit clunky for the Rogue
slow.
player.
You don't actually have any way to combo here.
Right. A single backstab or preparation would open this hand up so much in being able to just come back onto the board with the tempo swings that SIs provide.
I mean, you can play Cold Blood on one of your opponent's guys and then SI7 agent, but it doesn't seem ideal, I'll be honest with you.
Honestly, it's not as ridiculous as it sounds. That is a play that Devou will be very heavily considering this turn, because he knows he needs to make these tempo swings as quickly as he can. And that's exactly what he's going to go for.
Yeah.
You almost sound surprised at yourself there.
It's like, I didn't think it was actually going to happen. Jeez. I guess sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
Yep. You know, this isn't really a matchup that's about bursting your opponent out, so Cold Blood isn't really a necessary card. You just need to kind of get a grip on the board.
And you are killing the creature that you put the Cold Blood on, so yeah, it's, they're not getting value out of it. It's basically turning the Cold Blood into a removal spell, and it's turning your SI7 agent into just a 3/3.
Yeah, exactly. It makes a lot of sense then when you put it that way. The Abusive Sergeant here is able to leverage one of these minions on board, keep pretty resounding control of this, but now suddenly these slow minions in the Rogue's hand are able to start to be played onto the board for a bit of value, but still lacking in those big tempo cards.
Too far behind?
Just another clunky minion as well. I mean, his time is running out. We saw a very similar game to this in Crane's series.
Devou, like, leaning back, exasperated breaths. That's brutal.
That Gormok is crushing. Absolutely devastating Gormok the Impaler there. Georgec, absolutely no reaction. Stone cold killer in his chair right now.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Gormok was probably one of the best cards he could have drawn there.
I think that is literally the best card in his deck. At the most important moment that he could have needed it. This is the biggest game of Hearthstone he's played. Picks up the Gormok exactly when he needs it. And I'm just amazed there is no reaction from Georgec.
I think Georgec knows he's going on.
I think it's getting very, very close to that point. Power Overwhelming is a huge pickup. 6, 8, 9 damage on board, 13 from the Power Overwhelming, 15 when you add the Defender of Argus. So he's getting extremely close right here.
This is not looking great for Devou.
I mean, now decisions have to be made. Does he keep respecting the board, or does he start pushing all this damage to the face? He's going to go with the former plan. He's going to respect the board presence of the Rogue, not allow them to get any leverage from their minions here. Defender of Argus is also going to come down. This still pushes a ton of damage through this turn, though.
Because even next turn, if, like, even your board gets too low, you can Forbidden Ritual, get a bunch of guys out. Like, just trading with his guys, making sure he has nothing, and you have the potential to have a lot more, is just very good.
And it may be time that you just, depending on what he draws here, does get the prep. So, okay, as your Drake, can he pick up anything that helps him get back onto this board that he even use with the preparation? It doesn't seem likely. Even Fan of Knives doesn't really get anything done on this board apart from taking out a 2-2. It's just such an unfortunate draw here from Devou. He'll be absolutely kicking himself that his deck has let him down here in a game where he really, really needed those early tempo cards.
And there were none.
Absolutely nothing, yeah.
Like 3 drops and higher.
Goes for all in on the Gadgetzan play, who's going to hope to chain together a bunch of removal spells.
It's too late.
I'm totally with you here, Frank. I think he's just too far behind to be able to recover. This is very quickly moving towards George C's game here. Chooses to use the Eviscerate on the 2-4, still leaves up 8 damage on the board. He's on 12. Second power overwhelming would be lethal here. He has a lot of ways to possibly lose this game. Direwolf Alpha is 2. He's going to life tap. Imp Gang Boss not quite enough.
Oh man, he's like 2 points away here.
He is exactly 2 off, which actually puts him in a tiny bit of an awkward spot because he now has to decide how much do I respect this auctioneer right now.
It's tricky.
The numbers are awkward as well, right? There's no minion that you can just buff up cleanly with the Direwolf and trade in.
You either get Gormak in there or you get 2 for 1 yourself.
You either just straight miss out on 5 damage here by using the Gormok, or you have to make a really, really inefficient trade.
It's like a weird position he's put himself. Not that he put himself in it, but it's a weird position he's been put in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think every time you're in this position, every now and again, you think, I'm so far ahead. There's no way leaving an auctioneer up can punish me, and then it inevitably punishes you incredibly hard. It's possible that he does make the play and gets rewarded for it now because there are literally no spells in his opponent's hand to leverage this auctioneer right now. If he draws 1 more minion...
Yeah, I think you just Direwolf and put him to 2. Like, you have to deal with so many things.
He is going to respect it. He is going to respect it. He's going to make the inefficient trades. Still threatening lethal on board this way. I definitely respect this option from George C.
I think that's still fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is going to need to be something spectacular. Sap is theoretically enough to keep him alive.
But it's not thrilling.
It's really not. But Auctioneer is going to go. He's going to follow up with the Sap. He needs to draw pretty much Backstab or Preparation number 2 right now to really have any sort of realistic hope. Doesn't get it. 1 damage right here is all George C needs.
Hold on.
That's not it.
Here, we're going to be tapping, I think. Yep.
That's not it either.
Jeez.
Now he has another auctioneer that he has to respect, and respecting this one costs him his entire board.
Just put him to 1?
Question mark?
See, I can't. Do you put him to 1, play Forbidden Ritual, then try to just Gormok his face next turn?
Is valid. You haven't seen Fan of Knives being used whatsoever.
Next turn.
You haven't seen a single Fan of Knives be used, and that could have an incredibly dramatic effect on your board. George C is going to, I think, he chose to make the disciplined play on the previous turn. I think he may choose to do the same thing here. Go for the Councilman Forbidden Ritual play, and then respect the Auctioneer again with the trade. This is very interesting, though. This is honestly too close to call for me. I would be so tempted to put him to 1 here.
Oh, yeah, I feel it.
Yeah, well, he does choose the disciplined option again, and again, you can see that even though he gave up his entire board, the ability to bounce back, he still has another 5/5 on the board.
And we know that he doesn't have anything that can really contest this. That's not going to
That is not it. Devou has no answers. Azadrake is going to have to pick up a miracle here, and it's not good enough. Man. Devou is going to concede here, and George C is now, I believe, our 6th player to book his spot at EU Spring Championship.
It's funny because we got stuck in a few of those later turns. It was such a clean start. Like it seemed like you had just had the game completely under control. But then you get to some of those later turns, and it was like, well, now I have to find ways to win.
Yeah, job well done by George C. He's now going to be joining Crane, Loy and Tice, Einer, and AK Wonder. And another opportunity for him to kind of showcase his skills despite being a young player. And a lot of players have been talking about how he's one of the UK's best, even though he didn't have much time to shine. And of course, I guess you're happy another person from your region is able to go through, right?
Hey, I'm a happy guy right now. There's 2 complexity players going through. There's a UK player going through. It's a good time to be Soddle right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, George, like we said last time in the Winter Championships, he was not able to compete. He got disqualified right at the tournament start, so he didn't get a chance to play through it. But this time around, his first time.
Seems like he made up for it.
He made up for it in spades. I mean, it doesn't matter if you got into the winner or through the lower bracket. You're still in, and that's a really big accomplishment.
Qualification's a qualification.
Yeah, and it was cool, too, because the story, what happened last time is his father took time to drive him all the way to the event, but his father usually works on weekends, so it's like he had to take time off work, and they really can't usually miss that time. So it's a really nice, heartfelt story. Let's head over to TJ and get an opportunity to chat with George C. and hear a few words from our winner, who is going to the Spring Championship.
Thank you very much, Dan. A big congratulations to George for moving on. It was a really tight series, and even though George had a big lead in that last match, it still sort of came down to the wire. Auctioneer can do some crazy things, but he managed to overcome. So that's the 6th player to move on to the Europe Spring Championship. It's a pretty crazy, a pretty diverse lineup, and I have to say it's definitely very stacked. And it looks like we do have George ready for an interview. So, George, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hey, first off, big congratulations, man. That's a big win for you. And how do you feel now that you've secured your spot in the Europe Spring Championship?
Feels pretty good, man. Feels pretty good.
Feels pretty good, man. Nice, nice. So you're a pretty young guy, I think 15, is that correct?
Yeah.
15.
Yeah.
So how do you balance, being the life of a normal teenager and also keeping up with Hearthstone at such a high level? How do you balance that?
I don't know, when you ladder and stuff, you just have to concentrate more. You can't afford to tilt. So yeah, you go to school, you come home, you play a bit of wizard poker, then that's pretty much it, yeah.
That sounds a lot easier than I think it is. So you look like you had a lot of confidence coming through these series. Even after you won, you sort of just nod your head, yeah, that's what I expected. Did you know that you were going to make it this far? What was your confidence level like going in to the spring preliminary?
Well, I came in with the idea that I would never win a round, and then every round after that's like an accomplishment. So then you feel better and you play better from that. Whereas if you come in and think you're going to win, it's just what? It's like, just doesn't make sense.
Well, are you going to change that mindset at all? Are you going to prepare any different going into the spring championships? Or are you just going to go with the same mindset where, if I go in thinking I'm not going to win, what's it going to be like?
It's the same mindset, because if you get knocked out, or you lose like the first series, and if you lose the next series, you're going to get knocked out. You might be super tilted if you actually, the first round, you came in with the idea you wanted to win the whole thing. So what you want to do is you want to think that every round's a step, right? Instead of just thinking, I'm just going to win it. It's going to be an absolute joke. So that's why I think I'll keep the same mindset.
Yeah, one round at a time. It seems like a pretty good motto. I want to talk to you about one of the choices that you had in your deck. So it was a little bit interesting. A lot of people were talking about it in the Warrior deck. Talk me through why you chose to put a Leroy Jenkins in that sort of mid-range Warrior.
The plan was to ban Warrior, right? Because Warrior has lots of healing. So you try to beat Rogue. We pretty much knew all the rogues would the pros would bring Rogue, right? So if you put in Finley as well, I know you were talking about that, you get the Hunter Hero power, you just click that button, fun and interactive, and then they just die. So yeah, that's pretty much why I had Leroy as well, for the extra damage against certain classes. Because then you can Grom them in the face, or you can Rag and then Grom, and then they're kind of like, they're on 10 health. They think they can't die, and then you drop Leroy, Corkron, Leroy, War Axe plus maybe Hunter Hero power or something, and it gives you 3 waves of damage to kill them. So they have to judge that, and it makes people play inefficiently as well. Because you also said something like, you should run Leroy in a format where they can't see your deck, but it's also the same in a format where they can see your deck, because they're playing inefficiently around it, even if you might not have it. Same with Harrison. So it's juggling in their mind already just by one card they don't expect.
That's actually some pretty next-level reasoning. I actually didn't expect an answer like that. I figured you'd just say you like to go face, but that was yeah, very true, very true. Also, lastly, I'd like to give you an opportunity to maybe thank anybody that's helped you along the way. Anybody that you'd like to give any shout-outs to.
There's this guy next to me called Swifty. Come on. This guy was with me both days, just talking me through whatever before rounds, and we just guess it gave me the better mindset in the games to play. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I didn't really practice with many people, to be honest. I feel it's better to practice with yourself, because your ideas get really mixed when you talk to loads of pros. They say, this matchup's good, and then the other person says, no, it's better for this. And then you get really confused and you're not sure what to bring. Whereas you bring consistent decks, you play well, you have a good practice group, you have fun as well, you don't get super triggered. And then, that's pretty much it.
All right, well, do it yourself. Way to go, man. Big congratulations. I look forward to seeing you in the Europe Spring Championships. Thank you very much.
Thanks, TJ.
Well, I like that guy. I'm rooting for him in the Europe Spring Championship. But we do still have 2 more spots left for that championship, and that means 2 more matches left to go on the day. We are going to have to go to a quick break before we jump into the second to last match of the day, but don't go anywhere, guys. More Hearthstone Championship Tour Europe Spring Preliminary right after this.